the two-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden weighing in here. B-Mac, interesting game between these two. I'm sure if I would have told you that Gardner Minshew's going to give you 30-plus points, you'd think that Philly gets out of there with the W. What were the biggest issues you saw here with the Philadelphia defense on Saturday?
Well, just CeeDee Lamb, number one. They had no answer for CeeDee Lamb. He did a lot of damage in the slot. It was hard for them to really get over losing Maddox in the first quarter because he's their best slot corner. And when he went out of the ball game, CeeDee Lamb just was tearing up things in the slot offensively for the Dallas Cowboys. And we saw splash plays. I mean, it's 3rd and 30. You can't give up a first down. 3rd and 30, Philly, you got to find a way to get off the football field. You cannot allow a pass catcher, a wide receiver, to get behind coverage to convert that 3rd down opportunity. That was huge because eventually the Cowboys ended up scoring on that same drive, if I'm not mistaken. So we just saw splash plays. We saw some mistakes, guys not being where they need to be in the coverage side of things that led to this huge victory for the Dallas Cowboys.
We know that Gardner Minshew is one of those backup types that you could feel good about coming into the game, handing him the keys to the car, especially in the position that Philadelphia is in right now. They want to maintain that momentum. I'll get there in a moment, but just surface level here. Gardner Minshew, haven't seen him in a minute. He goes out and puts on this type of show for his team. Does he look like a serviceable stopgap, assuming that Jalen Hurts will miss more time beyond here just on Saturday?
Well, you don't want to go into the playoffs with Gardner Minshew as your starting quarterback. Because Jalen Hurts is just that good. Now, let's keep it real. Gardner Minshew, he didn't have a horrible game, but we saw some costly mistakes, something you can't do on the road. But in totality, Joe, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're a good team. They're a good team. They had a defensive touchdown, right? They were harassing Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott eventually found his rhythm, but yet and still, they were right there. A team with 4 turnovers had 34 points on the road and still had a real good chance to win that ball game in the last possession, of course, turnover on downs in the red area. So huge win for the Cowboys, and they're dealing with some woes as well when it comes to injuries. But yes, he's a good backup quarterback. He's a guy that can give you serviceable moments in a ball game. But when you talk about getting into January football, you want to have your best. And I'm not saying they lost this ball game because of Gardner Minshew, but I believe if they had a healthy Jalen Hurts, no question they win this ball game because from top to bottom, they have the better team. They have the better roster. And they still had a real good chance to win this ball game with their backup quarterback and having 4 turnovers in a ball game.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia, if you're walking away from this one, you scrap it, you move forward. There was plenty here to take away on the positive side of things. Talk to me about the moment here for Dallas, because last week they throw the game away quite literally in overtime against Jacksonville. They fall asleep at the wheel. The week prior, a near miss against Houston could have easily been a loss as well. How big was it to get this win at home against a team that you could see down the road, especially if you have Super Bowl designs?
Well, it's huge because you want to find a way to win ball games. And unfortunately for the Cowboys, they were playing down to the level of the competition, and they just were not closing the deal. And when it comes to critics jumping on the Cowboys, they can have an off week, to say the least, in regards to criticism that they usually receive when they allow a huge game to slip through the cracks. So this was a great opportunity for them, even though they're playing against a backup quarterback, finding a way to win the ball game. Their defense, they gave up a lot of things right to the Eagles offensively, but they were so opportunistic that led to extra possessions for Dak Prescott. And I love what I saw from Dak Prescott, Joe. You talk about a pitcher just basically giving a grand slam, allowing a grand slam in the first inning, and then after that just coming and bringing nothing but heat. You know, that's who Dak Prescott was in this ball game. That costly interception that led to 7 points, he didn't blink at all. He didn't blink at all. And you know what I say all the time? I love players that are willing to run into a burning kitchen. And Dak Prescott showed that outside of that interception. And that was huge for his growth as well, and just building and establishing more confidence in who he is as a passer.
Yeah, it was a pick 6 to end the game last week. And then on his 3rd throw of the game in this one, another pick 6. To your metaphor here, a first-inning home run given up, but was pretty nails from that point on. He has expressed some of these highs and lows, Dak Prescott, throughout this season. And maybe we're looking for a little bit more even keel when it comes to playoff football. Is he a championship quarterback in your eyes?
Is Dak Prescott a championship quarterback?
And I know that's a tough one to dig into here because it's just very interesting.
I'll say
he shows you everything you need to win, but he showed you some things that can lose you a ball game as well.
I'll say this, Joe. You can get to a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott. You can. Now, when you talk about a championship quarterback, meaning a guy that can lead his team to the promised land, let's keep it real. There are only a few quarterbacks that can do that are currently playoff worthy right now in the National Football League. And Pat Mahomes is one, right? I'll say Josh Allen is another. And it's everybody else. Based on what we're seeing from Jalen Hurts, I think you can put him in that conversation as well in regards to being a championship quarterback, a quarterback that can get his ball club to the promised land. And the unique thing about Jalen Hurts is not necessarily all on his arm, on his throwing shoulder. We've seen him dominate running the football. Well, over a week ago, right, he didn't have one passing touchdown, but had 3 rushing touchdowns. That's a unique style that he has. So to answer your question, is Dak Prescott a championship quarterback? I believe you can get to a championship with Dak Prescott. I do believe so. And I'm saying that based on what we've seen when he's in his bag. Now, every quarterback have off days sometimes. Unfortunately for Dak Prescott, when he has an off day, it's a big deal because of the organization he's playing with. But I think based on who he is as a passer and seeing what he was able to do against a real good defense, by the way, Joe, who was pretty healthy, who can really cause a lot of havoc against most opposing quarterbacks. Yes, I think Dak Prescott's a championship quarterback. And I answer that. I will reiterate this, Joe, meaning he can get you to a championship. Okay. I believe he can do so.
It's just a thought exercise I thought I'd put you through, and I'm glad I did because it feels like we fleshed some things out there. It is a velvet rope that's much easier to get by once you've got one. And the only guy that's really in that situation and threatening for a Super Bowl this year is the aforementioned Pat Mahomes. Let's take a look at the NFC playoff picture because a lot of movement means no movement. And I mean a lot of losses here on Saturday equates to little changing in this playoff picture. When we look at it, 6, 7, 8, and 9 in this playoff picture, all lost on Saturday. The Giants fall to 8-6-1, Commanders to 7-7-1, Seahawks to 7-8, Lions to 7-8. The Cowboys with the win here get a little bit more breathing room on that from that sixth line, excuse me. B-Mac, we had the conversation last week about the Seahawks, the Lions, and even the Packers here who we'll see on Sunday. Does this playoff picture, 1 through 7, look like where you think it'll end? Not seeding, but the 7 teams that'll play in the playoffs for the NFC, are they currently in that picture in your eyes?
Yeah, I think so. I still think it's up to the Giants and the Commanders because clearly they have a game over the Seahawks and the Lions based on the overall record. I think they still has the best team, complete team. I was really disappointed in what I saw from Seattle today. Granted, they were on the road, but I thought offensively they would generate more production than what they did against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, their defense really surprised me because they really forced Pat Mahomes and his offense in some difficult situations, but they didn't finish the deal. But the biggest disappointment for me was the Detroit Lions. That was the most surprising loss. When you talk about a lopsided win in favor of the Carolina Panthers and seeing how well the Detroit Lions were playing over the last few weeks, I felt like they would go into that situation that was a winnable game in their favor and take care of business. Losing that ball game now, their back is against the wall all the way. So I think the Giants, they could have won that ball game against the Vikings. Unfortunately for the Giants, they were playing against the Cardiac Vikings. This is the best team in the league when it comes to a one-possession ball game, and they did what they've been doing the entire season. But I like the Giants' chances, and let's see what Carson Wentz can do. You know what I mean? Can he give some energy and some real good play for the Commanders to be able to get into the division, get into the playoffs? One thing I'll say lastly on this, what about the Green Bay Packers?
Okay.
They still have an opportunity, Joe. They still have an opportunity, and we know even though the Aaron Rodgers that we have watched this year hasn't really been a reflection on who he's been the last few years, but he still has a little bit of that it in him, I believe. So what happens if the Green Bay Packers beat Miami this week? They would have the same identical record as the Seahawks and the Lions, and basically one game out of the Commanders. So it can get real interesting moving forward if the Green Bay Packers beat the Miami Dolphins Sunday.
And the great Bryant McFadden once told me, when in doubt, you go with the better quarterback. And of the quarterbacks leading those teams at the bottom of that picture, I'll take Aaron Rodgers 12 times out of 12. Bryant McFadden, appreciate you.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.